The Galactic Academy of Interspecies Cooperation and Development wasn't just the most prestigious educational institution in the known universe. It was also the most expensive, most exclusive and most architecturally confusing place Lieutenant Commander Vextaria had ever had the misfortune of working at. And this, she said, extending two of her 6 appendages toward the gleaming crystalline dome before her, is our primary educational hub. Please maintain proper distance from the structure as it is semi-sentient and easily startled. Behind her, 3 human cadets stared up at the massive structure with varying degrees of awe and skepticism. The tallest one, Jaden, according to her datapad, squinted against the triple suns. "So, it's alive?" he asked, moving his hand closer to the structure. "Did you not hear what I just said about maintaining distance?" Vextaria snapped, her translucent skin flushing a deep purple with frustration. This is precisely why the Admission Council fought against accepting Deathworlders for 72 cycles. The female human, Mackenzie, crossed her arms. "We prefer Terrans, actually. Or humans works too. Deathworlder is a scientific classification, not a slur," Vextaria replied with the practiced patience of someone who'd given this speech too many times. "Your species evolved on a Class 13 planet with excessive gravity, toxic oxygen levels, extreme temperature variations, and unrelenting solar radiation. The fact that you not only survived but developed spacefaring technology is, statistically improbable." The third human, Omar, grinned. "We're full of surprises. That's precisely what concerns the faculty," Vextaria muttered, as she guided them away from the dome, which had begun to tremble nervously at their proximity. As they continued the tour, the Academy grounds buzzed with activity. Hundreds of different species from across the galaxy moved through the sprawling campus, some floating, some slithering, some using mechanical assistance, and all giving the humans a wide berth. "Why is everyone staring at us?" Mackenzie asked, waving cheerfully at a group of jellyfish-like beings who promptly changed colors and drifted away. "You're the first humans ever admitted to the Academy," Vextaria explained. "Most species here evolved on planets with 1/10 your gravity and atmospheres that would be considered a vacuum by your standards. To them, you're essentially walking disaster zones." "That seems a bit dramatic," Jaden said, accidentally bumping into a hovering crystalline entity that immediately shattered into 17 pieces with a musical chime. Vextaria sighed deeply. "Those were Chancellor Tiziktik's meditation crystals. They'll reform in about 6 standard cycles, but still, this is exactly what I'm talking about." "Sorry," Jaden called out to the scattered fragments, which chimed sullenly in response. They approached a massive amphitheater, where hundreds of alien cadets sat in tiered seating arranged by atmospheric requirements. Vextaria directed the humans toward a segregated section labeled High Gravity Toxic Atmosphere Species. "This is the Grand Lecture Hall," she explained. "Dean Corxillian will be delivering the welcoming address shortly. Try not to breathe too aggressively. The Vapory delegation on Level 3 experiences existential crises when exposed to forceful exhalations." Omar raised his hand. "Quick question, where are the bathrooms?" "Waste elimination facilities are calibrated to specific biological processes," Vextaria replied. "Your temporary facilities are located in the far quadrant of the East Wing, past the methane gardens, and through the temporal distortion corridor." "That doesn't sound very convenient," Mackenzie observed. "The Academy wasn't designed with humans in mind," Vextaria said, with what might have been a smirk if her facial structure allowed for such expressions. "The Admission Council was overruled on your acceptance." A hush fell over the amphitheater as a being composed entirely of shimmering light patterns floated to the central platform. Dean Corxillian had no discernible physical form, but projected authority through pulsating waves of luminescence. "Welcome, new cadets." The Dean's voice resonated directly in everyone's mind, causing the humans to wince. "For 10,000 cycles, the Galactic Academy has trained the brightest minds from across the universe. Our graduates form the backbone of the United Stellar Federation. You represent the future of interspecies cooperation." The light patterns shifted, briefly forming what looked like a frowning face directed at the human section. "This cycle marks a historic expansion of our admission policies to include representatives from less conventional evolutionary backgrounds." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as hundreds of alien gazes fell upon the 3 humans. The Terran species will be participating in all standard training modules, despite their unique physical limitations and concerning predatory instincts. "I trust all cadets will demonstrate appropriate caution and tolerance." Omar leaned toward Mackenzie. "Is it just me, or did that sound like 'don't blame us if the scary humans eat you'?" "Pretty much," she whispered back. From several rows behind them came a dismissive snort. The humans turned to see a towering insectoid being with gleaming carapace and multiple compound eyes. The name badge on his uniform identified him as Commander Krex, head of survival training. Deathworlders, he chittered just loudly enough for them to hear. Your presence here is a political experiment, doomed to failure. My training program has a 99.8% success rate, but I suspect you'll make up that missing point too. Jaden opened his mouth to respond, but Vextaria cut him off with a sharp gesture. Commander Krex is a highly decorated Academy instructor, she warned quietly, and your primary survival training officer. I suggest maintaining a respectful silence. Survival training. Omar perked up. That sounds promising. For us, maybe, Mackenzie muttered. Not sure about everyone else. As Dean Kirksilian's welcoming speech continued, filled with thinly veiled warnings about human unpredictability, the three cadets exchanged determined looks. They weren't just representing Earth at this academy, they were representing humanity to the entire galaxy, and the galaxy had no idea what it was in for. 3 standard cycles into their time at the Galactic Academy, the humans had already earned a reputation, not as the mindless predators many expected, but as something the faculty found far more concerning: unpredictable problem solvers. You can't just hit it until it works. Vextaria's voice echoed down the corridor of the technology lab. Her skin had turned an alarming shade of orange, a color the humans had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of horrified disbelief. Jaden looked up from the damaged atmospheric calibrator he'd just successfully repaired with a solid thump from his fist. But it did work. That's not the point. Vextaria's appendages fluttered in distress. These are delicate instruments attuned to quantum fluctuations. They require careful recalibration, not physical assault. I prefer the term percussive maintenance, Jaden replied with a grin. At 6'4" with shoulders like a bulldozer, and hands that could crush the typical alien's exoskeleton without trying, he'd become the living embodiment of humanity's brute force approach to problem solving. Before joining the Academy, he'd been an engineer on the first human deep space mission. His solution to most technical problems involved some combination of duct tape, brute force, and stubborn determination. From across the lab, Omar looked up from where he was systematically taking apart, rather than assembling, his assigned quantum communicator. Hey Vex, quick question. Is it normal for these things to contain a miniature black hole? Vextaria's skin paled to a sickly yellow. Don't touch that. The singularity is contained within a gravitational field generator. Yeah, I figured that out, Omar said, already reassembling the device with surprising speed. While Jaden was all brawn and straightforward solutions, Omar was the exact opposite. 5'8" of pure nervous energy and analytical brilliance. Before the Academy, he'd been a theoretical physicist with a side hobby in computer hacking. Your technology is fascinating but honestly over-engineered. You could achieve the same communication speeds with half the quantum entanglement. That's not. Vextaria struggled to find words as Omar completed reassembling the communicator, which now glowed with twice its previous efficiency. Fixed it, he announced cheerfully. Also gave it a bit of an upgrade. Should work across dimensional barriers now. From the back of the lab came a loud crash followed by a string of creative Earth curses. Mackenzie stood amid a pile of what had once been anti-gravity boots, her red hair escaping from its regulation bun, and her freckled face flushed with frustration. These stupid things are calibrated for beings that weigh less than a chihuahua, she complained, kicking one of the boots, which promptly activated and zipped to the ceiling. How am I supposed to learn anti-grav maneuvers when the equipment can't handle normal human mass? Mackenzie had been a search and rescue specialist in Earth's most extreme environments. While Jaden approached problems with force and Omar with analysis, Mackenzie's specialty was adaptation. She never met a hostile environment she couldn't conquer, or a survival situation she couldn't navigate. The equipment is standardized for the average galactic species, Vextaria explained, trying to regain her composure. Humans are statistical outliers. Story of our lives, Jaden muttered. The lab door hissed open, and Commander Krex's imposing insectoid form filled the entryway. His compound eyes swept over the chaos of the lab, mandibles clicking in what the humans had learned was his expression of disapproval. I see the Deathworlders are destroying Academy property right on schedule, he chittered. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a less technologically advanced environment. Say, a survival training exercise. Omar glanced up. Actually, that sounds fun. Krex's mandibles clicked faster. Fun, you find the prospect of survival training amusing. Well yeah, Mackenzie said, retrieving the boot from the ceiling with a makeshift grappling hook she'd fashioned from lab supplies. "It's kind of our thing. Surviving against the odds, adapting to hostile environments, that's basically Earth's tagline." "Your confidence is misplaced," Krex said, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. "Tomorrow's exercise will take place on the Academy's simulation deck. The environment will be perfectly balanced, fair for all species." The three humans exchanged skeptical glances. "Define fair," Jaden said. "The conditions will favor no particular evolutionary adaptations." Krex explained with what seemed suspiciously like smugness. "The perfect test of true survival skills without any unfair advantages." After Krex departed, Omar turned to his fellow humans. "Did that sound ominous to anyone else?" "Definitely ominous," Mackenzie agreed. "He's going to create an environment that neutralizes everything that makes us good at surviving." Vexteria, who had been quietly observing the exchange, surprised them by speaking up. "Commander Krex has designed survival courses for over 300 different species. He has a particular expertise in creating environments that test the limits of evolutionary adaptations." "Great," Jaden sighed. "So he's going to put us in some kind of zero-gravity, low-oxygen bubble where our muscles and bones are basically useless." "Actually," Vexteria said, her skin shifting to a thoughtful blue, "I believe you misunderstand the commander's intentions. He doesn't want to see you fail. He wants to see you adapt without relying on your physical advantages." Omar raised an eyebrow. "Wait, are you trying to help us?" Vexteria's skin flushed purple with embarrassment. "I'm merely providing context. As your assigned liaison, my job is to ensure you understand Academy expectations." "Well, in that case," Mackenzie said with a grin, "could you provide some context about what might be in tomorrow's simulation?" "That would be inappropriate," Vexteria replied primly. Then, as she turned to leave, she added almost casually, "Though I should mention that Commander Krex has a particular aversion to unpredictable behavior patterns and improvisation. He finds them distastefully chaotic." The door slid shut behind her, leaving the three humans staring at each other. "Did she just give us advice?" Jaden asked. "I think," Omar said slowly, "she just told us exactly how to beat Krex at his own game." Mackenzie grinned, already gathering up parts from the damaged anti-grav boots. "Then let's make sure we're ready to be as unpredictable as possible. Earth style." As the humans huddled together planning for the next day's challenge, word spread quickly through the Academy. The betting pools, officially prohibited but universally participated in, were heavily favoring Commander Krex. Only a small handful of alien cadets, including a particularly observant Vapori, who'd witnessed Mackenzie's improvised grappling hook, placed their credits on the Deathworlders. They would soon be very, very rich. The simulation deck was the crown jewel of the Galactic Academy, a massive chamber capable of generating virtually any environment from across the known universe through a combination of hard light projection, molecular reconfiguration, and what humans would simply call really advanced alien tech. As the cadets gathered outside the entrance, Commander Krex stood before them with his segmented limbs clasped behind his back, mandibles twitching with barely contained satisfaction. "Today's exercise," he announced, his voice clicking and chittering through his translator, "is designed to test pure survival instinct without favoring any particular evolutionary advantage. You will be randomly assigned to mixed species teams and dropped into the simulation with no prior knowledge of the environment. Your objective is simple: survive for 6 standard hours and locate the extraction point." Jaden leaned toward Omar. "Is it just me? Or did he look right at us when he said randomly assigned?" "Oh, he definitely did," Omar whispered back. $10 says we get separated and paired with the most physically fragile species in the Academy." Mackenzie snorted. "Sucker bet." Commander Krex continued. "To ensure fairness, all participants will wear these standardization bands." He held up what looked like metallic bracelets. "They create a localized field that normalizes certain biological functions: strength, speed, sensory perception. All will be adjusted to the galactic average." "Called it," Jaden muttered. "For some species, this will enhance their capabilities," Krex explained, mandibles clicking in what the humans now recognized as his version of a smirk. "For others, it may impose certain limitations." As predicted, when the team assignments were announced, the humans were separated. Jaden found himself paired with a Vapori named Mist, a cloud-like being who communicated through pulsations and had no solid form. Omar was teamed with Tilix, a crystalline entity whose body was so fragile that even ambient sound waves at human conversational volume could cause microfractures. Mackenzie was assigned to Zephlin, a spindly, 6-limbed arachnoid, whose species evolved in 1/8 Earth gravity and could be crushed by a firm handshake. Remember, Commander Krex said as the teams lined up at different entry points. This exercise is about adaptation and intelligence, not brute strength or evolutionary accidents. May the most deserving species succeed. With that not-so-subtle jab, the doors hissed open, and the teams entered the simulation deck. Mackenzie and Zeppelin stepped into what appeared to be a dense purple-tinged jungle. The air was thick with spores that glowed faintly in the dim light filtering through the canopy. "This is suboptimal," Zeppelin chittered, his spindly limbs trembling slightly. "This atmosphere contains trace elements that interfere with my respiratory filtration system. You can breathe though, right?" Mackenzie asked, already scanning their surroundings for useful resources. "Define breathe," Zeppelin replied. "If you mean extract sufficient oxygen to prevent immediate cellular death, then yes, technically. That's the spirit," Mackenzie said, patting him gently on what she hoped was a shoulder and not something more sensitive. "Let's get moving. Standing still makes us easy targets." Targets. Zephelin's compound eyes widened. The exercise parameters mentioned survival, not combat. On Earth, those are often the same thing, Mackenzie explained, fashioning a crude spear from a fallen branch. When Zeppelin stared at her makeshift weapon in horror, she added, "Just precautionary. I'm a plan for the worst kind of gal." Elsewhere in the simulation, Jaden was discovering that his partner, Mist, had a rather unique approach to problem solving. "Can you, I don't know, solidify?" Jaden asked as he watched the vaporous alien drift indecisively between two possible paths. Such a violent suggestion. Mist pulsated indignantly, their voice coming through Jaden's translator as a series of melodic tones. "Phase transformation is an intimate process, not to be performed casually before near strangers." "Sorry," Jaden said, not for the first time wishing he'd paid more attention during xenobiology orientation. "I just thought it might help us move faster if you weren't, blowing in every direction with the breeze." "We Vapori do not blow," Mist replied haughtily. "We drift with purpose. Currently, I am sensing ambient particle movement to determine the safest route. While you do that, I'm going to try something radical called walking forward and seeing what happens," Jaden replied, pushing through the dense undergrowth. A shrill alarm suddenly pierced the air, followed by Commander Krex's voice. "Attention all teams. The simulation parameters have been updated. Environmental hazards are now active. Good luck." Almost immediately, the ground beneath Jaden's feet began to tremble. That can't be good. In yet another section of the simulation, Omar and Tillix had discovered what appeared to be an abandoned research station, a promising location for supplies and possibly information about the extraction point. "I calculate a 73% probability that entering this structure will result in a positive outcome," Tillix chimed, their crystalline body refracting the light in mesmerizing patterns. "And the other 27%? Omar asked, eyeing the darkness beyond the station's entrance. "Complete structural failure of my body resulting in permanent deactivation," Tillix replied, matter-of-factly. "But the standardization bands should theoretically prevent that." "Theoretically," Omar repeated dryly. Very reassuring. As they cautiously entered the station, lights flickered on automatically, revealing a laboratory in disarray. Equipment was scattered, displays cracked, and what appeared to be warning symbols flashed on the remaining functional screens. "This seems deliberately ominous," Omar observed, picking up what looked like a datapad. "Almost like it was designed to." The floor suddenly dropped away beneath them, sending them plummeting down a chute. Tillix emitted a high-pitched crystalline scream that made Omar's teeth ache. Through their monitoring station outside the simulation, Commander Krex watched with grim satisfaction as chaos unfolded across all sectors. The crystalline entity was vibrating at a frequency that would have shattered their body without the standardization band. The Vapori was being dispersed by powerful atmospheric processors, and the arachnoid was frozen in terror as predatory sounds echoed through the jungle. As expected, he chittered to his assistant. "The Deathworlders are handicapped without their excessive physical abilities. Now we'll see how they fare when actual intelligence is required for survival." His assistant gestured toward one of the monitors. "Sir, you might want to see this." On the screen, Mackenzie was rapidly constructing a shelter from materials in the jungle, using techniques that hadn't been covered in any academy training. In another sector, Jaden had somehow created a rudimentary containment field for Mist using only his uniform and found materials. And Omar was bypassing security protocols on the station's computer with alarming efficiency. "Impossible," Krex chittered angrily. "The standardization bands should have neutralized any unfair advantages." His assistant's antennae twitched nervously. "It appears, sir, that the human's advantage isn't entirely physical." As if to emphasize this point, All three monitoring screens suddenly displayed the same message: environmental controls accessed, parameters modified. Commander Krex's compound eyes widened in alarm. How did they, sir? His assistant interrupted, pointing at Omar's screen, where the human was grinning directly at the camera, waving what appeared to be a hacked control module. I believe the humans are adapting. Commander Krex's mandibles clicked furiously as he jabbed at the control panel. Lock them out of the system. Activate the secondary protocols. Initiate emergency, sir, his assistant interrupted, antennae drooping. The human called Omar has already bypassed the secondary protocols. He's left a message. On the main screen, large text appeared: nice try. Standardization bands can't standardize creativity. What is that symbol at the end? Krex demanded. I believe it's a human facial expression indicating smug satisfaction, his assistant replied. Before Krex could respond, warning lights began flashing throughout the control room. The assistant's appendages flew across the monitoring station. Sir, there's a catastrophic system failure in the environmental stabilizers. The simulation is collapsing. Inside the simulation, the carefully designed environments began to merge and destabilize. The purple jungle where Mackenzie and Zeflin had been navigating suddenly filled with rising water. The abandoned research station where Omar and Telix were exploring started breaking apart as gravity fluctuated wildly, and the rocky terrain where Jaden and Mist were traversing cracked open, revealing bubbling pools of simulated acid. Attention all teams, Krex's voice echoed through the simulation, barely maintaining its authoritative tone. Due to technical difficulties, the exercise is terminated. Proceed to the nearest exit point immediately. But the exits had disappeared in the environmental collapse. In the jungle sector, Mackenzie grabbed Zeflin as the water rose rapidly around them. Can you swim? She asked urgently. My species evolved on an arid plateau. We have no natural bodies of water. Zeflin chittered in panic, his spindly limbs thrashing uselessly. Without hesitation, Mackenzie hoisted the arachnoid onto her back. Hold on to me gently. I'll get us to higher ground. But the standardization band, your strength should be reduced to galactic average. Mackenzie grinned as she began swimming powerfully through the rising water. Turns out the galactic average is still pretty good when you've spent your life training for search and rescue missions. Also, I may have modified my band a little when Krex wasn't looking. In the disintegrating research station, Omar was frantically working to stabilize the gravity fluctuations while Telix vibrated with increasing distress. My structural integrity is approaching critical failure thresholds, the crystalline being chimed anxiously. Working on it. Omar called back, his fingers flying over the salvage control panel. The simulation's core systems are fighting my override. Classic case of spaghetti code. Someone really should teach these aliens about proper documentation and fail-safes. Is this really the time for a critique of programming methodologies? Telix asked, their voice rising to a pitch that threatened to crack glass. Actually yes, Omar replied, not looking up from his work. Because I just found the back door. Hold tight, this might feel weird. He pressed a final sequence, and the gravity stabilized, but not at normal levels. Instead, everything in the room became weightless. 0G is easier to maintain than artificial gravity, Omar explained as they began floating. Now we can move without you shattering into a million pieces. Which way to the nearest exit, or rather which direction, since way implies a floor. Meanwhile, Jaden and Mist found themselves trapped on a rapidly shrinking island of stable ground as the acid pools expanded around them. This is unfortunate, Mist pulsated, their vaporous form contracting in distress. The acidic vapors will dissolve my molecular bonds if they reach critical concentration, and they'll dissolve my everything if they touch me. Jaden muttered, looking around desperately for an escape route. His eyes landed on a piece of equipment partially submerged in the acid, what appeared to be a disabled environmental control node. I have a really stupid idea, he announced. Your species seems to specialize in those. Mist replied. Jaden grinned. Exactly. And somehow they keep working. He stripped off his outer uniform jacket and wrapped it around his hand for protection. I'm going to grab that control node. If I can reset it, we might be able to stabilize this section long enough to find an exit. The acid will destroy your protective covering in seconds. Mist pulsated in alarm. Then I'll have to be fast, won't I? Jaden replied, and before the Vapory could protest further, he lunged forward, plunging his wrapped hand into the acid to grasp the control node. The jacket began dissolving immediately, but Jaden's expression didn't change as he pulled the device free and scrambled back to their island. His hand was red and blistering where drops of acid had penetrated the makeshift protection. You're damaged. Mist expanded in shock. Just a little chemical burn, Jaden said through gritted teeth. Already working to access the node's controls with his undamaged hand. Not my first, probably not my last. On Earth we have this saying, no pain, no gain. Your species deliberately seeks out pain. Mist's vaporous form shuddered. Not exactly, Jaden replied, wincing as he pried open the control panel. But we don't let the fear of it stop us either. Back in the control room, Commander Krex watched in disbelief as the humans not only survived the simulation collapse but were actively working to save their alien partners. This is unprecedented, his assistant commented, antenna twitching with what might have been admiration. The Deathworlders are demonstrating remarkable problem-solving abilities even without their physical advantages. They're breaking every protocol. Krex chittered indignantly. The female has tampered with her standardization band. The small male has hacked our systems, and the large one, he stopped, compound eyes fixed on the monitor showing Jaden's blistered hand as he worked on the control node. He's injured, yes sir, the assistant replied, quite severely, according to our bioscanners. Yet he continues functioning at optimal capacity. For the first time since the humans had arrived at the Academy, Commander Krex was silent, his mandibles completely still. On the monitors, the three humans were converging, somehow navigating the collapsing simulation to find each other, protecting their alien partners along the way. Mackenzie carried Zephlin through chest-deep water while holding a makeshift raft sheet constructed above her head to keep him dry. Omar had created a protective bubble around Telix using repurposed force field technology. And Jaden had rigged the control node to emit a neutralizing field that kept the acid at bay, while Mist hovered close to him, using their vaporous form to cool his injured hand. Sir, the assistant said urgently, we need to extract them immediately. The simulation's core matrix is approaching critical failure. Krex's compound eyes remained fixed on the screens. They're not trying to escape, he said slowly. They're heading toward the central processing hub. But why would they? His question was answered as the largest screen suddenly displayed a schematic of the simulation deck. 3 blinking dots, representing the human cadets, were converging on the central hub, while other dots, the remaining alien cadets, were scattered throughout the simulation. They're going to try to stabilize the entire system, the assistant realized. Not just their own sections. That's impossible, Krex protested. Even our technicians couldn't safely. He was interrupted by a transmission from within the simulation. Omar's face appeared on the screen, looking determined despite a nasty cut above his eye. Hey Bug Boss, he said without preamble. Your simulation is about 30 seconds from complete meltdown. The containment fields are failing, which means when it goes it takes half the Academy with it. We're heading to the core to manually reset it, but we need you to drop the security lockouts. That's against all protocols. Krex chittered. Omar's expression hardened. Your protocols are about to get everyone killed. Make a choice. For a moment that felt much longer than it was, Commander Krex stared at the human on the screen. Then his mandibles clicked once, decisively. Security lockouts disabled, he said, pressing a sequence on the control panel. But the core will incinerate any organic matter that approaches it when it's in critical status. Omar grinned. Good thing we brought friends with non-standard physiologies. Then, the screen went dark as the transmission cut out. On the monitoring system, the 3 human dots reached the central hub, accompanied by their alien partners. Sir, the assistant said quietly, should we evacuate the control room? Commander Krex's compound eyes remained fixed on the monitors. No, he said finally. I want to see what they do. The central processing hub of the simulation deck resembled what humans might call the inside of a small sun, a swirling mass of energy, data and pure light contained within a spherical chamber. Under normal circumstances, it was a marvel of alien engineering. In its current destabilized state, it was a ticking bomb. Well, that looks thoroughly unsafe, Mackenzie commented as the 3 humans and their alien companions gazed through the reinforced viewport into the chamber. Her uniform was soaked, her red hair plastered to her head, but her eyes shone with the particular brand of manic energy that humans get when everything is going catastrophically wrong. The core temperature is approaching 12,000 kelvins, Omar reported, examining a nearby display. The containment field is at 17%, and dropping. Jaden winced as he flexed his blistered hand. So what's the plan? We've got about, 5 minutes before this thing goes nuclear. 3 minutes, 47 seconds, Tulix chimed helpfully, their crystalline body catching the pulsating light from the core. The central stabilization matrix must be physically reset. Zeppelin chittered from his perch on Mackenzie's shoulder, where he'd remained since she'd carried him through the flooded section. But as Commander Krex warned, organic matter would be instantly vaporized upon entering the chamber. All eyes turned to Mist, who had been unusually quiet, their vaporous form contracting and expanding nervously. Oh, Mist pulsated with sudden understanding. Because I lack solid form, I could theoretically survive the energy discharge long enough to reach the reset mechanism. Theoretically, Omar emphasized. According to my calculations, you'd have about a 60% chance of making it to the controls, and a 40% chance of maintaining molecular cohesion long enough to activate them. Those aren't great odds, Jaden said, frowning. No, Mist agreed, their form pulsing rapidly. They are not. Mackenzie's face softened. We're not asking you to sacrifice yourself, Mist. There has to be another way. What about Tulix? Jaden suggested. Crystalline structures can withstand extreme temperatures, right? Tulix vibrated anxiously. While my molecular structure is indeed more resistant to thermal energy than organic matter, the radiation would cause catastrophic lattice disruption within seconds. I would shatter before reaching the controls. So we need something that won't burn, won't shatter, and can still manipulate the reset mechanism. Omar summarized, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Unless one of us suddenly develops superpowers, we're out of options. A thoughtful expression crossed Jaden's face. Maybe not. What if we combine our resources? What do you mean? Mackenzie asked. Tulix can withstand the heat, but would shatter from radiation. Mist can withstand radiation but would disperse from the energy currents. What if they went in together? Tulix as the structure, Mist as the operator. The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. It would require a level of coordination that is Tulix began. Unprecedented between our species, Mist finished. Welcome to working with humans, Mackenzie said with a grim smile. Unprecedented is our comfort zone. Omar was already typing frantically on a salvaged data pad. I can rig a temporary molecular bond that would allow Mist to use Tulix's structure as a framework without compromising either of your natural forms. It would only last about 30 seconds before breaking down, but that might be enough time. And what about Zeppelin? Jaden asked, glancing at the arachnoid still perched on Mackenzie's shoulder. I will coordinate from here. Zeppelin chittered, his compound eyes fixed on the displays monitoring the core's status. My species possesses exceptional calculation abilities under stress. I can guide them through the optimal path to avoid the worst energy discharges. As the aliens began preparations for their desperate plan, Commander Krex's voice suddenly came through the communication system. This is madness, he chittered. The probability of success is minimal. Abort immediately, and proceed to emergency shelters. With all due respect, Commander, Mackenzie replied, not looking away from her work helping Omar configure the molecular bonding device. Shut up and let us save your simulation. There was a moment of stunned silence before Krex responded. You realize that even if you succeed, this violation of protocols will result in severe disciplinary action. Jaden laughed, a sound so unexpected that even the aliens paused to look at him. We're from Earth, Commander. Disciplinary action is practically our natural habitat. 2 minutes until critical failure, Zeppelin announced, breaking the moment. The preparation accelerated. Omar finished the bonding device, while Mackenzie and Jaden helped position Tulix and Mist at the chamber entrance. The plan was complex but elegant in its improvisation. Tulix would provide the physical framework, while Mist, bonded to their crystalline lattice, would provide the fine motor control needed to operate the reset mechanism. Ready? Omar asked, finger poised over the bonding device's activation switch. Tulix chimed in affirmative. Mist pulsated their agreement, initiating molecular bonding in 3, 2, 1. A flash of energy surged between the two aliens, and suddenly they were one. Tulix's crystalline form now suffused with Mist's vaporous essence, creating a being that glowed with inner light. The sensation is unusual, came a voice that somehow combined Tulix's melodic chimes with Mist's pulsating tones. How's the control? Mackenzie asked anxiously. The combined entity extended a limb, manipulating it with surprising precision. Adequate. We shall proceed. The chamber door slid open, releasing a blast of heat that forced the humans to step back. Without hesitation, the Tulix Mist fusion glided into the maelstrom. 30 seconds until bond deterioration, Omar called after them. Make it count. From his position at the monitoring station, Zeppelin began calling out directions. Energy surge at 3 o'clock. Veer left, now right. The reset panel is 17 degrees upward from your current position. Inside the chamber, the combined entity fought against the swirling energies. Tulix's crystalline structure cracked in places but held together, while Mist's vaporous essence provided just enough flexibility to absorb the worst of the impacts. They reached the panel with 10 seconds to spare on the molecular bond. The panel requires a specific sequence, Zephlin chittered urgently. Delta 7 Epsilon, 9 Omega 3. Through the viewport, the humans watched breathlessly, as crystalline appendages moved across the control panel with vapor-guided precision. The final sequence was input with just 2 seconds remaining on the bond. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the swirling energy of the core began to stabilize, the wild fluctuations smoothing out into controlled patterns. The temperature readings on the monitors started to drop. "It's working," Jaden shouted, pumping his uninjured fist in the air. But their celebration was premature. As the core stabilized, a final energy surge erupted from its center, heading straight for the Tulix Mist fusion. The molecular bond had already begun to break down, leaving them vulnerable. Without thinking, Mackenzie lunged forward and slammed the emergency chamber door closure, sealing their alien companions inside with the energy surge, but protecting everyone outside from the blast. Mackenzie, Omar and Jaden yelled in unison. The viewport automatically polarized as the energy surge hit, preventing them from seeing what happened inside. For several agonizing seconds, there was no movement, no sound, except the gradually normalizing hum of the core. Then the chamber door slid open, revealing nothing. "No," Mackenzie whispered, her face pale. A moment later, a small cloud of vapor drifted through the doorway, followed by a badly cracked but still intact crystalline form. That, Mist pulsated weakly, was unpleasant. But effective, Tulix chimed, their structure glittering despite the damage. The humans' faces broke into identical expressions of relief and joy, an expression that aliens throughout the galaxy would soon come to recognize as the uniquely human response to surviving something that should have been unsurvivable. In the control room, Commander Krex watched as the simulation deck returned to stable parameters, the emergency warnings fading one by one from his displays. His compound eyes remained fixed on the scene unfolding on the monitor, 3 humans embracing their alien companions in what his species would consider uncomfortably close proximity. "Sir?" His assistant ventured cautiously. "The simulation has stabilized, all cadets are accounted for. Shall I initiate standard protocols for exercise conclusion?" Krex was silent for a long moment, his antenna absolutely still in contemplation. Finally, his mandibles clicked once, decisively. "No," he said, "I believe standard protocols are insufficient for this situation." He reached for the communication control and opened a channel to the central hub. "Attention, human cadets," he chittered, his translator rendering his voice in the flattest tone it could manage. "Report to the command center immediately following medical evaluation. We have much to discuss regarding your unconventional approach to today's exercise." On the monitor, the 3 humans exchanged looks that Krex was beginning to recognize, equal parts defiance, amusement, and the peculiar confidence that seemed to be their species' most defining characteristic. "Looking forward to it, Commander," Mackenzie replied, her grin visible even through the grainy feed. "We've got some feedback on your simulation design we're dying to share." 3 standard cycles after what Academy records officially termed the simulation incident, and what the student body was unofficially calling the day humans broke everything, the grand lecture hall was filled to capacity. Representatives from every species in the Academy, and some who had arrived specifically for this occasion, crowded the tiered seating, their varied physiologies creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Dean Corxillian's luminous form hovered at the central platform, patterns shifting in what might have been nervousness. "Before we begin today's ceremony," the Dean's voice resonated in everyone's mind, "I wish to acknowledge that the events we are commemorating represent a significant paradigm shift in our understanding of interspecies capabilities. The Academy Council has deliberated extensively on the appropriate response to actions that were, by our standards, both unauthorized and unprecedented." A ripple of murmuring passed through the crowd as all eyes turned toward the 3 humans seated in the front row, now wearing newly designed uniforms that actually accommodated their physiology, rather than treating it as an inconvenient anomaly. The human cadets, the Dean continued, light patterns intensifying, demonstrated problem-solving methodologies that our curriculum had not anticipated. While their actions violated 17 separate Academy protocols, they also saved the simulation deck from catastrophic failure and prevented what could have been significant casualties. Commander Krex stepped forward, his imposing insectoid form somehow less intimidating than it had been a week earlier. His mandibles clicked softly before he spoke. As the instructor responsible for the training exercise, I wish to personally address the outcome, he chittered, compound eyes sweeping across the assembled cadets. For 300 cycles, I have designed survival scenarios based on the principle that all species face the same fundamental challenges when stripped of their evolutionary advantages. He paused, antenna twitching in what the humans had learned was a gesture of concession. I was mistaken. The silence in the hall was absolute. The human cadets demonstrated that true survival capability lies not in physical attributes or even technological proficiency, but in something far more fundamental: the ability to improvise, to cooperate across physiological boundaries, and to prioritize collective survival over individual success. He turned to face the three humans directly. Cadet Jaden, your willingness to endure physical damage to retrieve the control node demonstrated a concept your species calls sacrifice that many of our training protocols fail to account for. Cadet Omar, your ability to reconfigure alien technology without prior training reveals cognitive flexibility that our standardized teaching methods cannot measure. And Cadet Mackenzie, your instinctive prioritization of Zephelin's safety over your own comfort represents a cooperative ethic that transcends mere tactical alliance. From their seats, the three humans exchanged surprised glances. This was not the disciplinary hearing they had been expecting. The dean's luminous form shifted again, creating patterns that indicated formal announcement. Therefore, by unanimous decision of the Academy Council, we are implementing the following changes. First, all standardization protocols will be reviewed to ensure they measure true capability rather than merely normalizing physiological differences. Second, a new training track focusing on interspecies crisis response will be established, with the human cadets serving as primary consultants. Murmurs rippled through the crowd again, louder this time. And finally, the dean concluded, Commander Krex has requested a special assignment. All eyes turned to the insectoid instructor, who stood straighter, mandibles clicking once before he spoke. I have submitted a formal request to serve as the dedicated tactical advisor to the human cadets, he announced. With the council's approval, I will be focusing my expertise on developing training protocols that maximize their unique creativity. Jaden leaned toward Omar. Did he just volunteer to be our babysitter? I think he just realized we're going to do crazy human stuff no matter what, so he might as well be there to minimize the damage, Omar whispered back. Mackenzie grinned. This should be fun. As the ceremony concluded, the crowd dispersed, but notably, many of the alien cadets lingered, casting curious glances toward the humans. Finally, a small delegation approached, led by Tillix, Mist and Zephlin. We have been designated as representatives. Tillix chimed, their crystalline structure now repaired, but bearing distinctive iridescent patterns where the cracks had been, a permanent reminder of their adventure in the core. Representatives of what? Jaden asked. Of those who wish to learn, Mist pulsated, their vaporous form shifting with what seemed like excitement. The techniques you demonstrated in the simulation, adaptation, improvisation, unconventional problem solving, many of us wish to understand these methods. Zephlin chittered in agreement, no longer perched on Mackenzie's shoulder but standing independently beside her. The council has approved a cultural exchange program. We will teach you about our species' specialized knowledge, and you will teach us how to— How did you phrase it, Mackenzie? Think outside the box, she supplied with a smile. Yes, although the metaphor remains confusing as none of us perceive reality as a box, Zephlin replied seriously. Omar laughed. That's lesson 1 in human thinking. Our metaphors rarely make literal sense. From across the hall, Commander Krex watched the interaction with his assistant beside him. Are you certain about this new assignment, sir? The assistant asked. The humans will undoubtedly continue to disrupt established protocols. Undoubtedly, Krex agreed, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. But consider this, for 10,000 cycles, the Academy has trained the best minds in the galaxy to follow our carefully designed procedures. In less than one cycle, 3 Deathworlders demonstrated that sometimes, the most effective approach is to ignore those procedures entirely. A concerning precedent, the assistant noted. Or an evolutionary advantage we have failed to develop, Krex countered. The humans have a saying that their cadet Jaden shared with me. Necessity is the mother of invention. Their species evolved on a planet that tried to kill them in countless ways every day. They survived not by following protocols but by creating new solutions when the old ones failed. His compound eyes tracked the humans as they began enthusiastically explaining something to their growing audience of alien cadets, complete with wild hand gestures that caused several nearby crystalline entities to nervously back away. The galaxy is changing, Krex continued. New threats emerge that our traditional approaches cannot address. Perhaps what we need is a little human chaos. As if on cue, a small explosion echoed from the direction of the humans, followed by surprised alien sounds and human laughter. A small cloud of harmless but spectacularly colorful smoke rose above the crowd. I believe, Krex chittered, already moving toward the commotion, that my new assignment begins now. In the weeks that followed, strange new practices began to appear throughout the academy. Vapory cadets were observed deliberately dispersing themselves to navigate complex obstacles, rather than maintaining their traditional perfect cohesion. Crystalline entities began experimenting with controlled microfractures to increase their flexibility. Even the methane-breathing Vordlax, traditionally the most conservative species at the Academy, were seen attempting human-style problem-solving exercises in the botanical gardens. And in the newly established Human Adaptation Lab, 3 Terran cadets worked alongside Commander Krex, teaching the galaxy's brightest minds the most dangerous skill humans possessed: the ability to look at the impossible and say, "I've got a really stupid idea that just might work." Every alien species had indeed learned the same lesson about Deathworld cadets: when the rules don't work, break them, and then build something better from the pieces.